Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to share with you 5 advantages and disadvantages to owning a pop-up camper. Behind me is my 2003 Viking pop-up camper, and I have probably spent about 50 nights or so in this camper. So I think I have some experience, and maybe you're thinking about getting a pop-up camper and want some more information about what's it like to own one and some of the pluses and minuses. This video is for you. So we'll jump right in with the advantages. The first advantage is simply that pop-up campers are lightweight. That means more vehicles can pull a pop-up camper and pull it safely and comfortably than a larger camper. I have a 2015 Toyota Tacoma with a 4.0 liter V6, and it pulls it very easily. I would say I feel it about 25 to 30% of the pull power in my truck. So not even really that noticeable. In fact, in my wife's 2023 Ford Explorer, it's got a 4-cylinder that's turbocharged. I can't even tell it's back there. So super easy to pull, super easy to pull down the highway. You don't get a ton of like drag coefficient and all that tossing you around because it's not very boxy and all that type of stuff. So just the lightweight of it makes it very easy to pull in any vehicle. The second advantage to having a pop-up camper versus a traditional camper is its size. It is much smaller, therefore it's easier to store, like in a garage, or at my house it's on a pad in the backyard. It doesn't take up that much space. It's easier to get into smaller spaces too. That could be at a campsite. The size could be more narrow. And pop-up campers are easy to get in and out. Also, here at the off-grid property, going down a trail down here into the bottom in the middle of my woods, it is super easy to pull. And if it was a lot, especially higher, I would be fighting tree branches, just scratching and tearing it up the whole time. And then just driving down the highway, it doesn't have a ton of size, so it's not getting tossed by the wind and you're not feeling it back there. So just its size, I think, is a huge advantage. Another advantage to a pop-up camper is because it's smaller, it uses less power. So my camper runs on a 30 amp plug, and I also have an adapter to run it off like a household outlet also. Just because it's smaller, the air conditioning and heating unit, the refrigerator, everything is smaller, just uses less energy. And when you go to like a state park or a campground, a lot of the time they may have 30 amp or 20 amp, but not the bigger amperage for your full-size RVs. So you can get into more campsites and use less electricity because it uses less power. Another advantage to owning a pop-up camper is the entry price. They are much cheaper than a traditional camper. I paid $2,000 for this camper in 2020. And it was for sale. I think I got very lucky and the Lord just blessed me with buying this because it was a fluke. I had been looking on Facebook Marketplace just kind of casually every once in a while for pop-up campers, and there was nothing in my area. Somehow, through going through all the search systems, I found this camper. It was being listed for someone who lived in my town, but it was being listed 400 miles away by their son. And so somehow I was able to track down that even though it said it was 400 miles away, it was actually 4 miles away from my house. And so I called them up and I was the only person interested, I think because it just got lost on Facebook Marketplace. And they had it for sale. I think it was for $3,000. And I brought my family to see it. I brought my little children and Heather had the baby in her arms. And I think that kind of sweeten them up a little bit to give me a better deal. And so I paid $2,000, and again, I've taken 30 or 40 trips in this, so now my cost basis is super low, and it's pretty much in the exact same shape as it was when I bought it initially. And you cannot find any camper traditionally anywhere close to this for $2,000, so they're much cheaper to like the entry price. They're just much cheaper overall. The final advantage in my mind is just smaller, so it feels cozier and a little more rustic than a traditional camper. I have some family members that have a traditional camper, and it's almost just like you're at home away from home. But with a pop-up, you hear some more noise outside, you feel the wind a little more, and it feels like you're camping more so to me. And that's an advantage in my mind because I like to just be outside and explore God's creation. So let me give you some disadvantages. The first one would be little to no storage space. I guess it's not no storage space, but little storage space. In a traditional camper, you can just throw whatever you want in there. You just open the door, throw whatever supplies you need, cooking supplies, food, sleeping bags, clothing. You just throw it all in there and you don't have to think about it. With a pop-up camper, you have about a 2-foot door that you have to open up and squeeze everything in there. So we have it normally loaded down with lawn chairs like what I'm sitting in, the grill that attaches to the outside, sleeping bags, stuff like towels and rags for taking showers, and our luggage, all of that stuff, and it can be a very tight squeeze. The second disadvantage would be lower build quality or materials used in the making and construction of a pop-up camper. Most of the outside shell is made up of canvas, like tent fabric. Now, it's much thicker, much more durable, but at the same time, it does wear easier. So you have to be careful, especially like in the corners of the beds and things like that. The build quality is just, in my mind, a little bit less than a traditional camper. So a third disadvantage would be noise. When you're on the inside of the camper, you hear pretty much everything going on outside. If there's a car going by at a campsite, if there's children playing nearby, if there's birds, whatever it may be, you hear everything. Now, that is a disadvantage, especially when you're trying to go to sleep. It's also a disadvantage knowing that everyone around you can hear you from the inside of the camper. But maybe it's an advantage because when you wake up in the morning, you get to hear the sound of the birds and the trees and everything. But sometimes that can be a little bit annoying. The fourth disadvantage is something you probably wouldn't think of, and that is feeling movement while you're inside the camper. Because the beds are on the outside, if someone tosses on one side, the whole camper will go whoop, and you just feel it. So for my wife and I, when we are asleep, we have small children on the other side, a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and as they toss and turn all night and flail about, we feel that, and it can be easy to wake you up at night. And so I don't like that, and I think it's just because of the physics of it, the weight being on the very ends and not centered in the middle. And the final disadvantage is simply space. And what I mean by that is taking up the space for the people that are on the inside. If our whole family is camping, it's myself, my wife, and then we have 2 daughters who are 10 and 8, and then we have our son who's 4. I think that we have about 3 years left with the camper before we outgrow it. Especially when we're eating meals and stuff. It is pretty tight squeeze, and that's part of the camping adventure. It's fun, but sometimes it can be a little annoying. All right, there you have it. There are your advantages and disadvantages to owning a pop-up camper. Camping is so much fun. Let me encourage you, get out there and explore God's creation.